The waters of the Øresund Strait, the narrow stretch of the Baltic Sea that separates Denmark from Sweden, have long been a corridor of history, trade, and maritime exploration. On a calm summer evening, the harbor of Copenhagen is typically a serene tableau of sailboats, industrial vessels, and the gentle reflection of the city lights on the dark water. It is a place that invites curiosity, a gateway to the open ocean and the mysteries it holds. But in August of 2017, this peaceful waterway became the focal point of one of the most complex, intensive, and scientifically demanding forensic investigations in modern European history. This is the story of a brilliant journalist who sought to uncover the fascinating truths of the world and the unprecedented collaboration of marine biologists, digital forensic experts, and dedicated investigators who worked tirelessly to uncover the truth of what happened to her. To truly understand the gravity of this case, one must first understand the extraordinary life and legacy of the woman at its center. Kim Wall was a 30-year-old Swedish freelance journalist whose talent and boundless curiosity had already left an indelible mark on international reporting. Educated at the London School of Economics and Columbia University, she possessed a rare combination of academic rigor and fearless empathy. She did not chase the easy headlines or the sensational breaking news. Instead, she traveled to the corners of the globe to find the quiet, overlooked stories of human resilience and eccentricity. She reported from the Marshall Islands on the lingering effects of nuclear testing. She traveled to Uganda to write about the complex history of the Idi Amin torture chambers. She explored the unique subcultures of Haiti, Madagascar, and North Korea. Her work was published in some of the world's most prestigious publications, earning her a reputation as a compassionate, deeply insightful observer of the human condition. She gave a voice to the voiceless, and she approached every subject with a profound sense of respect and genuine interest. In the summer of 2017, Kim Wall was preparing for a new chapter in her life. She and her partner were planning a move to Beijing, a transition that promised new adventures and new stories to tell. But before leaving Scandinavia, there was one local story she had been trying to secure for months. It was a piece about a quirky, ambitious subculture right in her own backyard. She was investigating a group of amateur engineers and enthusiasts who were attempting to build their own rockets and submarines. The focal point of this story was a 46-year-old Danish inventor who had gained local notoriety for constructing the UC3 Nautilus, a privately built, 40-ton, nearly 60-foot-long submarine. For years, the inventor had been a colorful fixture in the Copenhagen harbor, crowdfunding his engineering projects and presenting himself as a maverick visionary. Kim saw an intriguing narrative about ambition, technology, and the independent space and sea race. On the afternoon of August 10th, Kim finally received a message from the inventor. He invited her to join him on the Nautilus for an interview and a short voyage in the harbor. It was an opportunity to see the vessel in action and gather the final details for her article. At around 7 in the evening, Kim boarded the dark, imposing submarine at the Refshaleøen Island in Copenhagen. Photographs taken by bystanders showed her standing in the conning tower, smiling, her notebook ready, embarking on what should have been a routine assignment. The submarine slipped away from the dock and slowly navigated out into the deeper waters of the bay. As the evening turned to night, Kim's partner, waiting for her return, grew increasingly concerned. She had promised to be back for a farewell party they were hosting, but hours passed with no word. Text messages went unanswered. Calls went straight to voicemail. By the early hours of August 11th, the concern had evolved into deep alarm. At 2:30 in the morning, her partner contacted the Danish authorities to report her missing. This single phone call initiated a massive, multi-agency search and rescue operation. The Joint Rescue Coordination Center scrambled helicopters and dispatched lifeboats to scour the Øresund Strait. Commercial vessels in the area were alerted to keep a lookout for the homemade submarine. The initial assumption was a mechanical failure. The Nautilus was, after all, an experimental craft, and the authorities feared the vessel had lost power or communications, leaving its 2 occupants stranded in the dark waters. Hours later, at approximately 10:30 in the morning, A lighthouse on the southern edge of the bay spotted the Nautilus. A private motorboat in the vicinity was directed to approach. As the civilian boat drew near, the witnesses observed the inventor standing alone in the conning tower. Suddenly, the submarine began to sink rapidly. The inventor jumped into the water and was pulled aboard the rescue boat. Within moments, the 40-ton Nautilus vanished beneath the surface, settling on the seabed over 70 feet below. When brought safely to the harbor, the inventor appeared calm. He spoke to the gathered press and the police, claiming that a minor issue with a ballast tank had caused a catastrophic failure, leading to the sinking. When asked about Kim Wall, he provided his first official statement to the authorities. He claimed that the interview had concluded the previous evening and that he had dropped her off at a restaurant at the tip of the harbor around 10:30 at night before continuing his voyage alone. The Copenhagen police immediately launched a missing persons investigation, led by the experienced homicide detective Jens Møller Jensen. The investigators began by systematically verifying the inventor's timeline. They canvassed the area around the restaurant where he claimed to have dropped Kim off. They reviewed hours of security camera footage from the surrounding docks, buildings, and streets. They cross-referenced the time with mobile phone tower data. The digital footprint was clear, and the camera lenses were unblinking. There was absolutely no trace of Kim Wall disembarking the submarine. She had not walked past the restaurant, nor had her phone pinged any land-based towers after the submarine's departure. The inventor's story was fundamentally flawed. Based on these glaring inconsistencies, the police officially detained the inventor, shifting the investigation from a search and rescue mission to a criminal inquiry. The immediate priority was to recover the sunken Nautilus. If Kim Wall had not disembarked, the police needed to know if she was still inside the vessel. Raising a flooded 40-ton submarine from the bottom of the sea is an immense logistical and engineering challenge. The Danish authorities contracted a specialized salvage ship, the Vina, equipped with heavy lifting cranes and deep-sea divers. Over the course of a grueling weekend, divers attached thick steel cables to the hull of the submarine. Slowly, inch by inch, the dark, waterlogged vessel was hoisted from the depths and secured onto a transport barge. Once the submarine was brought to land, it was completely drained of seawater. Forensic technicians, clad in white protective suits, entered the claustrophobic metallic interior of the Nautilus. The conditions inside were challenging. The deliberate sinking of the vessel meant that the interior had been flushed with thousands of gallons of seawater, a factor that could potentially wash away critical biological evidence. However, modern forensic science is incredibly resilient. Using specialized lighting and chemical reagents, the technicians meticulously swabbed the walls, the floorboards, and the mechanical components. Despite the water damage, they discovered microscopic traces of biological material. DNA analysis quickly confirmed that the material belonged to Kim Wall. Furthermore, the pattern and location of the evidence suggested that a severe event had occurred inside the vessel. Most crucially, the physical search of the interior confirmed one undeniable fact. Kim Wall was not inside the submarine. Confronted with the evidence that Kim had never been dropped off at the restaurant and that her biological material was found inside the sunken vessel, the inventor changed his story. In his second statement to the police, he claimed that a terrible accident had occurred. He stated that he was holding the heavy steel hatch of the conning tower open for Kim, but his foot slipped, causing the 150-pound hatch to slam shut, striking her directly on the head. He claimed the impact resulted in a fatal injury. According to this new narrative, he panicked, realizing that no one would believe it was an accident. In his state of shock, he claimed he decided to give her a traditional burial at sea, carefully lowering her remains into the Baltic Sea before deliberately sinking his own submarine in despair. This revised narrative presented the investigative team with a monumental challenge. They now had a suspect admitting to the disposal of a body, but claiming the death was purely accidental. To prove or disprove this claim, they had to find the physical evidence. They had to find Kim Wall. Searching for evidence in the open ocean is famously described as looking for a needle in a haystack, where the haystack is constantly moving, changing, and obscuring the needle. The Øresund Strait covers hundreds of square miles, with complex underwater topography, shifting currents, and varying depths. The Danish police knew they could not simply send divers into the water blindly. They needed science. The investigation enlisted the expertise of oceanographers and marine geologists from Aarhus University and the Danish Defense Ministry. These scientists utilized highly sophisticated computer drift models. They inputted data regarding the water temperature, the wind speed, the salinity of the sea, and the complex tidal currents of the specific days in question. By calculating the exact point where the submarine sank and factoring in the suspect's known movements via radar tracking data, the scientists mapped out a probability grid of where objects dropped into the water might have drifted or settled. Simultaneously, the Danish investigators reached out to their counterparts in Sweden, requesting the assistance of highly specialized maritime cadaver dogs. Unlike standard search dogs that track scents on land, these remarkable canines are trained to detect the microscopic gases released by biological decomposition as they rise through the water column and break the surface of the sea. The dogs were placed on the bows of small police inflatable boats, navigating the grid mapped out by the oceanographers. The handlers watched the dogs intently, looking for specific behavioral cues, indicating they had caught the scent. When a dog alerted, the handler would mark the GPS coordinates. To account for the wind blowing the scent across the water, the boats would approach the area from multiple angles, creating an intersecting point of detection. Once a specific coordinate was triangulated, the police deployed specialized dive teams and underwater remotely operated vehicles equipped with sonar and high-definition cameras. Over the course of several weeks, this unprecedented combination of oceanographic modeling, canine olfaction, and deep-sea diving yielded results. Systematically, the recovery teams located carefully concealed evidence resting on the seabed. The investigators discovered that the perpetrator had gone to extraordinary lengths to ensure the evidence would never be found. The remains had been subjected to severe post-mortem alteration and were deliberately weighed down with heavy metal pipes and machine parts secured with specialized straps. It was a cold, calculated effort at concealment, entirely inconsistent with a panicked, makeshift burial at sea. As the physical evidence was recovered, it was transported to the forensic pathology laboratory in Copenhagen. The medical examiners were tasked with determining the cause of death and testing the suspect's claims. Their findings provided the most crucial turning point in the investigation. The suspect had explicitly claimed that Kim Wall died from a massive blunt force trauma to the head caused by a heavy falling hatch. However, a meticulous examination by forensic anthropologists revealed an absolute absence of any cranial fractures. The skull was completely intact. There was no blunt force trauma. The scientific evidence proved beyond any doubt that the suspect's second story was a complete fabrication. Furthermore, the medical examiners found numerous specific injuries indicating deliberate, inflicted harm, directly contradicting the narrative of an accident. Faced with the undeniable medical evidence that the hatch story was a lie, the inventor changed his narrative for a third time. He now claimed that while he was on the deck of the submarine, a sudden mechanical failure caused a vacuum effect inside the vessel, trapping Kim below deck and filling the cabin with toxic exhaust gases. He claimed he was unable to open the hatch due to the pressure difference and that she had died of carbon monoxide poisoning before he could reach her. He further claimed that he only performed the post-mortem alterations to the remains because he was unable to lift her out of the submarine intact. Once again, science was called upon to test the suspect's claims. Forensic toxicologists analyzed the recovered tissue samples for the presence of carbon monoxide and carbon dioxide. In cases of exhaust gas poisoning, carbon monoxide binds to the hemoglobin in the blood, leaving specific, highly detectable chemical markers in the muscle tissue. The laboratory results were definitive. There was no elevated level of carbon monoxide or carbon dioxide in the tissues. The exhaust gas narrative was scientifically impossible. Furthermore, engineers from the Danish Navy examined the salvaged submarine. They tested the engine, the exhaust systems, and the hatches. They concluded that while a vacuum effect was theoretically possible in some submarines, the specific conditions and mechanical failures described by the suspect had not occurred on the Nautilus. While the medical and engineering teams were dismantling the suspect's physical alibis, the Digital Forensics Division was uncovering the chilling truth of his intentions. Investigators had seized the suspect's computers, hard drives, and mobile devices from his workshop and his home. Digital forensic experts understand that deleting a file rarely removes it entirely from a hard drive. It simply removes the directory pathway, leaving the actual data hidden in the unallocated space until it is overwritten. Using advanced forensic software, the technicians imaged the drives and began excavating years of digital history. What they found completely shattered the illusion of a harmless, eccentric inventor. The digital footprint revealed a dark, deeply disturbing psychological profile. The technicians recovered deleted internet search histories, encrypted files, and time-stamped data that showed a prolonged and escalating interest in extreme violence. The suspect had been actively seeking out and viewing authentic documentary footage of executions, decapitations, and severe psychological torment. More importantly, the digital forensics established a clear timeline of premeditation. Just hours before Kim Wall boarded the submarine, the suspect had conducted specific internet searches regarding the exact methods of harm and concealment that were later found to have been inflicted upon the victim. This digital evidence was corroborated by a physical inventory of the items the suspect had brought onto the submarine that evening. Investigators discovered that he had loaded the vessel with sharpened screwdrivers, specialized saws, and heavy metal pipes. Through interviews with the suspect's associates and fellow engineers, the police established that these specific tools had absolutely no mechanical or engineering purpose on the UC3 Nautilus. They were not used for maintaining the engine, adjusting the ballast tanks, or operating the vessel. They were brought on board for one specific, terrible purpose. The accumulation of evidence painted a clear, undeniable picture. This was not a mechanical accident. This was not a sudden panic. It was a meticulously planned, calculated act of predation. In March of 2018, the trial commenced in the Copenhagen City Court. The atmosphere in the courtroom was heavy, filled with local and international press and the grieving family and friends of Kim Wall. The prosecution, led by Jakob Buch-Jepsen, presented a clinical, overwhelming case built on the unbreakable foundation of forensic science. The prosecutor did not rely on emotional appeals. He let the evidence speak. He walked the court through the oceanographic drift models, explaining how science had defeated the suspect's attempt to hide the truth at the bottom of the sea. He presented the medical examiner's reports, systematically disproving the hatch accident and the exhaust gas poisoning theories. He displayed the digital forensics, connecting the time-stamped internet searches to the physical tools brought onto the submarine. The defense attempted to maintain the narrative of the exhaust gas accident, arguing that the prosecution could not definitively prove the exact cause of death due to the time the evidence spent in the water. They argued that the suspect was a deeply flawed, unconventional individual, but not a murderer. However, the prosecution countered with a comprehensive psychiatric evaluation of the suspect. The court-appointed psychiatrists described him as a highly intelligent but deeply narcissistic and psychopathic individual, lacking any genuine empathy, who used his charm and his status as a local celebrity to manipulate those around him. The psychiatric report concluded that he posed a severe, ongoing danger to society. After weeks of highly technical and emotionally grueling testimony, the panel of judges and jurors retired to deliberate. The verdict, when it was delivered in April of 2018, was unanimous and resolute. The suspect was found guilty on all charges, including premeditated murder, the indecent handling of a corpse, and sexual assault. The court noted the overwhelming weight of the forensic evidence and the completely fabricated nature of the suspect's multiple defenses. He was sentenced to life imprisonment, the most severe penalty available under Danish law. Appeals were subsequently filed, but the High Court firmly upheld the sentence, ensuring that the perpetrator would remain behind bars. In the aftermath of the trial, the Danish authorities made a significant decision regarding the UC3 Nautilus. Recognizing that the vessel had become the scene of a horrific crime, and to prevent it from ever becoming a macabre monument or an object of morbid curiosity, the police ordered the submarine to be completely dismantled and destroyed. The metal was cut into pieces and recycled, erasing the physical manifestation of the perpetrator's false legacy from the Copenhagen harbor. But the true legacy of this case does not belong to the submarine, nor does it belong to the man who built it. The enduring legacy belongs entirely to Kim Wall. In the wake of the tragedy, her parents, her partner, and her vast network of friends and colleagues refused to let her story end in the dark waters of the Øresund Strait. They established the Kim Wall Memorial Fund. This foundation was created to honor her spirit by providing grants to young female journalists who want to travel the world and cover the underreported vital stories that Kim herself would have pursued. The fund empowers a new generation of reporters to go out into the field, equipped with the resources and safety training they need to tell the stories of subcultures, everyday rebellions, and the quiet heroes of the world. Through this fund, Kim Wall's voice continues to echo in the world of journalism. Her dedication to truth, her boundless empathy, and her fearless pursuit of the unknown remain an inspiration. The unprecedented forensic investigation that secured justice in her case stands as a testament to what can be achieved when science, determination, and international cooperation are brought to bear against deception. The professionals who worked the case, from the oceanographers mapping the currents to the digital forensic experts recovering hidden files, ensured that the truth could not be buried. As we reflect on the incredible life of Kim Wall and the tireless scientific endeavor that brought her justice, we are left to consider the nature of trust and truth in our society. The tools of investigation have never been more powerful, capable of reading the microscopic memories of the sea and the hidden codes of a computer drive. Yet, the work of journalism, the pursuit of understanding those around us, remains a profoundly human endeavor, requiring courage and an open heart. When someone dedicates their life to shining a light into the obscure corners of the world, how do we as a society ensure that the pursuit of truth remains protected in an unpredictable world?